We asked our church school children to do something a little special. You know, they were very blessed here in Perth Amboy to have the Metropolitan visit often. So between his visits here and his visits at Camp Nazareth, where many of our children attend the sessions in the summertime, they got to know the Metropolitan very well. So we asked them to write a paragraph or two about their remembrances. So if all of the children who wrote something would come forward, we're going to let them read them to you. Now there's one in particular that I have to read. The young man is not here, but if you remember, if you're an old timer like me, there used to be a program by Art Linkletter, Kids Say the Darndest Things. This would fit into that category. This was written by one of our little altar boys. He said, I think Metropolitan Nicholas was kind, nice, peace-loving, and powerful. Metropolitan Nicholas sat on a big chair with a staff, and he worked the church very well. I remember when he came to church, and that was my first visit with him. I also remember the time when church was so long that I almost starved to death. I think we could all relate to that from time to time. Here's another one from a young lady who is not here. She writes that Metropolitan was a very good man. He was a good friend. My great-grandma grew up with him. I remember when we were in church one day for his 50th anniversary of being a bishop. The church was filled with people. I remember standing up in the choir and seeing someone go and kiss his hand. Metropolitan will always be remembered. Kayla Spencer. Where is Kayla? Kayla's going to read hers.
Metropolitan Nicholas was such a delight person to have at Camp Nazareth. His bright smile welcomes everyone around him. We would kiss his hand and he gives us a small icon card. I remember after church we would take a picture of all the kids at camp with Metropolitan Nicholas.
We all remember the little gifts the Metropolitan had. Steve Skokin.
I have a couple of memories with the Metropolitan, even though I didn't really see him that often. But I remember when the first time I met the Metropolitan that I had to kiss his ring and I didn't know what to do. And I even got to sit down with him and talk, and I got to talk with him for a long while about, you know, normal things, about a childhood and everything. And we talked for a long time, like 3 hours per se. It was a long time, I couldn't remember. And he was a great joy to be around while I was my middle name was coincidence. His first name was Richard and my middle name was Richard too. And another memory of the Metropolitan is when it was his 50th anniversary as a bishop. And we had to kiss his hand. And it was peaceful. It was a peaceful service packed with people, mainly priests and everything. I was small at the time, so all I saw was black robes. And he was the greatest person I've ever met, and I really miss him.
Okay. Is Alexandra here? Not Alexandra Spencer. She is not here. Well, I have to read hers, because this is another one that would be on our Linkletter show. When I think of Metropolitan Nicholas, I think of camp. I remember him visiting every year. One time we were on the church's patio, a black car came rolling down the road. The priest then rang the bell to alarm the campers that Metropolitan had arrived. From every corner, people came pouring into the church. That day in his sermon, he talked about watermelon and corn. He asked Father to go buy some for dinner. Later that day, a truck came and unloaded a whole lot of watermelon and corn. I will never forget all the wonderful memories of Metropolitan Nicholas. It was Alexandra Spencer. Okay, Megan, I think we have yours.
Our favorite memory of the Metropolitan is when we used to meet him at the door like nice ladies and gentlemen. We gave him flowers. We remember him sitting in his royal chair with his royal chef. I didn't write it.
Oh, you didn't write staff.
Staff in front of the church. He was wearing his royal crown. He was wearing gold. Metropolitan was in our church for some special holidays such as Easter and Christmas. Metropolitan was related to our very special friends in our church. He sang to us.
Thank you, Megan. Okay, Anastasia and Alexandra Bank.
Metropolitan Nicholas has been an important part of our family for many years. When he came to the seminary in Johnstown, our grandfather tells the story of helping the new seminarian carry his suitcases up the driveway. When Father Smisko was the pastor of 10th Street Church in New York, our dad was his altar boy. And when our dad was thinking about attending the seminary himself, it was Father Nicholas who brought him to Johnstown. Metropolitan Nicholas, whom we lovingly refer to as Bishop Nicholas, married our parents and baptized us. What we will remember the most about our beloved bishop is the special times we shared with him in Johnstown.
Our family spent nearly every Christmas and Easter with him. He would invite us to his home where we would admire his Christmas tree, eat with him, and play with his cat. He always gave us special books, wooden eggs, icons, crosses, and other gifts we treasure. Every Christmas Eve, we would join him at our aunt and uncle's house for Holy Eve supper. He loved the potato and bean soup, and we remember how he never thought it had enough vinegar. This past Christmas Eve, a place was set for him at the table, and although he wasn't there sitting in his usual seat, he was with us in our hearts.
Girls, you mentioned his cat. I think Father Malaro would gladly give you his cat. Deacon Gregory, what do you think? You want a cat? Okay, we also have Carissa Thompson.
My cousin kind of stole my favorite memory of the Metropolitan, but the bells, the bells. Metropolitan Nicholas's favorite part of church, he always said, the sound of the bells. He gave many sermons prior to the ringing of those bells, but the sermon that soon became a memory that I held close to my heart must have been about 5 or 6 years ago. I was about 10, and after attending camp for 4 years prior, I was used to the Metropolitan's ritual. He would visit the campers every week for church, be greeted, stay for a meal, give a sermon, or some words of encouragement. The day he visited, it was a typical, hot, humid, mid-July summer afternoon. Metropolitan Nicholas began a sermon that eventually led into some of his favorite memories of the camp. Suddenly, in the middle of the sermon, he asked, "Do we have corn? Do we have watermelon?" Half the camp burst out laughing, and when Father replied no, Metropolitan Nicholas pulled out his wallet, and an hour later, an entire trunk full of corn and watermelon was parked outside of camp for everyone. My remaining recollection of that day was having corn husks falling on my head through the deck during free time as counselors shucked away to prepare the new foods. I have to admit that was the most ripe and delicious watermelon I've ever had. I shared it with my fellow siblings in Christ in the Metropolitan. Now, whenever I hear the bells, I think of that hot day at camp and Metropolitan Nicholas. He lives on through the bells. Although we can no longer see him, those bells are a reminder of his teachings, ringing loud and clear. The bells of the Orthodox Church will never stop ringing, and with them, Metropolitan Nicholas's teachings will never pass with him. Because people may not live forever, but their impacts on others are everlasting. They forever ring.
And last but not least, we have Matthew Spencer. You can talk about watermelon too?
I have so many memories of Metropolitan Nicholas at camp and here. And the one thing I remember about him most was he always tried his very hardest to visit us at camp. And the years he couldn't, he would always write a letter saying how much he missed us and how much he wanted to see us. He was a humble, caring, thoughtful man, and he had a great sense of humor, as we all know. He always had gifts for us every time we approached him at camp, little icons. And many of them I still have in my room. The one thing I remember most about him was how much he commented and loved the beauty of the camp singing, the beauty of the camp, but most of all, the beauty of the children. He loved hearing us sing, and he would often tell us how he could sit in church and just listen to our voices all day. He also loved the bells. I remember one sermon he gave in our church right here was how when he was a little boy, he would sit in the back of the church and listen to the bells ring. That story touched me because as you walk into church, you hear the bells, but you never really think about how long they've been a tradition in our church. And so I want you all to do me a favor and make me a promise that as we leave here tonight, the next time you hear our church's beautiful bells, you'll remember how great of a man he was and smile, because I know he's smiling down on us right now.
Let's have a round of applause again for all of our children. Thank you very much. I think you touched all of us with your words.